Hello again, my nieces and nephews. I am so happy that you have managed to sneak away from your parents' houses for to visit your Uncle Boris. I know you want the borscht, and I have some preparing in the kitchen right now. But before we enjoy our borscht, you have asked me to tell the tale of my horrible experience in the Ural Mountains, yes? It is the reason that I no longer go to mountains at all anymore. Well, I will explain that today because it started many years ago, 3 years ago now, when I decided that I wanted to take hike up into the mountains. So I decided to go west into the forest, past those signs with all these skulls and crossbones on them. You have seen them, yes? Well, I start walking, and I eventually reach the forest, but I find that there is wire fence placed all around the area. And I think that this is excellent idea. I do not know when they have done this, but it's great idea, keeping all the animals inside. Because if all the animals were simply allowed to leave, it would ruin the natural beauty of the place, yes? Well, so it's a very good idea. However, this wire fence is in my way. So I take out a pair of wire cutters and I begin to cut the fence. I always have wire cutters with me, little childrens, because many years ago I have heart attack, and when I wake up, I am told that my brothers and sister have allowed the doctors to put artificial heart inside my body. I do not understand what this is, but the way they explain it to me is is a kind of robot that lives inside me and keeps me alive. And I think that this is terrifying, having robot inside me all the time, because what if it decides that it wants to take over my entire body? So I always carry surgical knife and wire cutters with me at all times. That way, if the robot ever makes attempt at hostile takeover, I can simply reach inside and cut its wire and it will be stopped. And I think that it must know what I am planning, because so far it has not tried anything. But this is why I have wire cutters with me when I go to hike in the mountains. So I begin to cut through the wire fence, and every time I touch it, it gives me a nasty jolt. And well, I realize now that the fence must have been electric fence, but at the time I simply assume I am having just another borscht-induced seizure. So I simply ignore it and I carry on along the way. I am hiking through the woods and is very nice day. Is somewhat cold. It is in early winter at this point, but I have jacket on and everything, and so I am fine. I am enjoying my hike. When suddenly I hear strange crashing in the bushes behind me, and my imagination begins to run wild, because what is this? This could be anything. It could be a fox, a lynx, an elk, a crocodile. I do not know. So I begin to move away from the sound, but it begins to follow me. It comes after me, and so I am moving faster, and this thing in the bushes also moves faster. Eventually I am running flat out, but still, whatever is making the noise in the bushes is catching up to me. And suddenly I hit rock face at the foot of the mountain, and it is far too steep for me to climb, so it is dead end, and I am completely trapped. Well, I turn around, and I finally see what it is that has been chasing me, and is an enormous brown bear. Is huge, even on all fours. It is taller than me, and it is galloping towards me at top speed. Its fur is thick and matted. Its teeth are as sharp as my wits, and its claws are longer than my entire hand. I am extremely terrified at this point. I can hear him snarling and grunting as he runs towards me, but luckily he completely ignores me. He simply runs right past. Well, I am feeling very relieved at this point at my near-death experience, yes? So my heart is racing and I turn around and suddenly I come face to face with tiny little squirrel. And at first I think, oh, he's very cute squirrel. But then suddenly it lunges at me, it jumps and it bites me in the ankle. And next thing I know, it has run up my pants leg. At this point, I realize why the bear was in such a hurry to get away, because this squirrel is nightmare squirrel. It is running up my pants leg, and the bear is even luckier. It does not have pants for the squirrel to run up. This thing is biting me and scratching me everywhere, and I can see is making bulge in my pants, on my legs, and so I try to hit at it, but this squirrel is simply too clever. Every time I try to hit it, it moves away and I am left only hitting myself. At this point I am in state of panic, and so I tear my pants off and I throw them as far as I can with the squirrel still inside. And it is very cold, of course. Like I said, it was a cold day. But that is alright, because I am running as fast as I can from the squirrel-infested pants. And I look around, and the squirrel has managed to get out and is following me again. At this point, I decide that I will try to fight back. So I grab a large stick off of the ground, and as the squirrel comes close to me, I swing, and I miss entirely. And I swing, and I miss again, but I am closer this time. And then the squirrel jumps at me, and he bites me in the ankle yet again. And so I jump, and I yell, and I kick out. And the squirrel flies far away. And I tear after it with my stick. At this point, the squirrel must realize that I am in state of rage. I am seeing red at this point. And so he runs away from me, and I follow it. I am determined to get this squirrel. Well, the squirrel runs through a small gap in a vent opening in the cliff face, past a giant spinning fan. Normally I would think this is very strange, but at this point I am in too much of rage to think of anything, so I simply force the opening wider and I crawl in after it. And I follow the squirrel through this maze of ventilation shafts. It's very narrow. I'm squeezing my way through these metal passageways until finally I find the squirrel, and it has run back to its secret nest. It has stockpiles of nuts for to eat and lots of bits of fluff and pine needles and things for to make its bed. But more importantly, it is cowering in a corner, and I have it trapped. And I come forward, and I know I am about to have my revenge, when suddenly it looks up at me with these large, helpless eyes, and I am overcome with pity and sympathy for this creature, because it is looking at me exactly the way my beloved dog, Gorchitsa, looks at me after the cat has attacked him. And so I set down my stick, because how could I have thought of harming such a small and beautiful creature? And then the squirrel jumps at my face and begins scratching everywhere. And I scream and I fall back and I fall down through the floor of the ventilation shaft. I break it entirely. And I fall down, falling from the ceiling into a large room. It is white room and is full of computers and scientists and large men with very big guns. But I am paying no attention to them, of course, because I am looking around, and I grab up my stick from the floor where it has fallen next to me, and I spin around and I am looking for the squirrel, because I must have my revenge. When suddenly several of the men grab me and they take my stick away from me, and they force me into another room. In here they handcuff me, and they search me, and then they ask me many questions, such as, what am I doing in here with wire cutters and a surgical knife, and wearing no pants? So, of course, I tell them, obviously, I am here because I must attack an insane squirrel. At first, I do not think they believe me, children. They are looking at me as though I am crazy and sort of muttering amongst themselves. and I am beginning to realize that I am in quite a predicament, yes? When suddenly the squirrel drops from the ceiling in this room and he attacks me again. And at this point I cannot defend myself because my hands are still handcuffed, only behind my back. And so I have no way to defend myself. I simply must run at the wall and smash my head against the wall in hopes of getting the squirrel off. But of course that only gives me headache. And so eventually the men managed to chase the squirrel away, and I am very grateful. At this point, I simply fall to the floor and beg them to put me in, protective custody, yes? For to keep me safe from the nightmare squirrel. And so the men puts me in these strange clothes and they lock me up and they tell me that they will take care of the squirrel, for which I am very grateful. And I suppose it must have taken them quite a long time to destroy the squirrel, because it is not until 7 or 8 months later that they finally let me go. And before I leave, they make me sign this paper swearing me to secrecy, stating that I will tell nobody about that place or what I have seen there ever in my entire life. And that is the end of my tale, childrens. I am sorry, but simply thinking about this has entirely put me off my borscht. It was such a traumatic experience. And so I think it is probably time for you to leave. Yes, it is true. You must go home before your parents get suspicious. They still do not know where you are. Just be sure not to attack any squirrels on your way home. It will not end well, childrens. All right. До свидания.